is the driver of global supply chains. Global logistics strategy. This chapter begins a discussion of the four critical functions of global supply chain management: logistics, purchasing, operations, and market channels. We start with global logistics. Interestingly, logistics is also where North American supply chain management meets European supply chain management. Since the early 1980s, North Americans have used the term supply chain management as an all-encompassing descriptor for a variety of activities that include not just logistics, but also purchasing, procurement, sourcing, and supply management, operations, and market channels, or marketing channels. Meanwhile, Europeans often refer to supply chain management as simply logistics, while Asians have a tendency to use the term operations in the same context. This discussion of global supply chain management and each core function describes how the strategic initiatives and tactical activities must be integrated. With that in mind, it is appropriate to trace the origins of the term supply chain. In 1982, Keith Oliver, a consultant at Booz Allen Hamilton, was the first person to use the phrase supply chain management in an interview with Arnold Cranston for a June 4, 1982, article in the Financial Times. Oliver defined supply chain management, SCM, as the process of planning, implementing, and controlling the operations of the supply chain with a purpose. 82. To satisfy customer requirements as efficiently as possible. Supply. Chapter 4: Logistics in Global Supply Chains. Logistics is the driver of global supply chains. Global logistics strategy. This chapter begins a discussion of the four critical functions of global supply chain management: logistics, purchasing, operations, and market channels. We start with global logistics. Interestingly, logistics is also where North American supply chain management meets European supply chain management. Since the early 1980s, North Americans have used the term supply chain management as an all-encompassing descriptor for a variety of activities that include not just logistics, but also purchasing, procurement, sourcing, and supply management, operations, and market channels, or marketing channels. Meanwhile, Europeans often refer to supply chain management as 83. Simply logistics, while Asians have a tendency to use the term operations in the same context. This discussion of global supply chain management and each core function describes how the strategic initiatives and tactical activities must be integrated. With that in mind, it is appropriate to trace the origins of the term supply chain. In 1982, Keith Oliver, a consultant at Booz Allen Hamilton, was the first person to use the phrase supply chain management in an interview with Arnold Cranston for a June 4, 1982, article in the Financial Times. Oliver defined supply chain management, SCM, as the process of planning, implementing, and controlling the operations of the supply chain with a purpose to satisfy customer requirements as efficiently as possible. Supply chain management spans all movement and storage of raw materials, work-in-process inventory, and finished goods from point of origin to point of consumption. A few years earlier, Oliver had been pushed on his supply chain ideas and his concept of integrated inventory management, or I2M, as he called it, by Mr. Van Toff of the Dutch electronics giant Philips. While Oliver thought that I2M indicated a set of integrated events, a chain of supply, Van Toff argued for a more precise term to identify the phenomenon of a set of linked connections rather than a group of disparate functions, as Oliver also liked to call it. Based on their discussions and dialogue, that concept initially became total supply chain management. Later, it was shortened to just supply chain management, the term we know today. It was all crystallized, initially, at least, in that Financial Times interview in 1982. This means that we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the formalized modern understanding of supply chain management in 2012. So, what is the logistics tie-in? Well, Prior to his dialogue with Mr. Van Toff and his interview with Arnold Kransdorff, Oliver, according to Damon Schechter, played a critical role in the development of logistics in the 1970s and 1980s. One, Oliver drove the concept that interconnected links in a chain was a better illustration and strategic focus than a standalone view of logistics. It is fascinating that logistics was initially perceived as an outbound/downstream function of the supply chain, since Keith Oliver, as a logistics professional, was the first to coin the term supply chain management and establish definitional boundaries for SCM. Today, however, logistics spans the full length of the supply chain, including important transportation, inventory management, packaging, and materials handling issues that are strategically imperative to the full functioning of the global supply chain. Going back in history, the term logistics dates from the late 19th century and has its roots in the French word logistique. More generally, logistics is broadly considered to have originated with a military's need to supply itself with arms, ammunition, and other necessities as the troops moved from a base position to a more forward position. And, going back, way back, to the ancient Greek, Roman, and Byzantine empires, military officers who were responsible for supply distribution-related activities were given the title logisticus. It's no wonder, then, that even today, many of the logistics professionals in academic circles and in industry have a military background, where their skills and knowledge were first honed. 84. Global logistics is the part of global supply chain management that plans, implements, and controls the efficient and effective forward and reverse flow and storage of goods, services, and related information between the worldwide point of origin and the worldwide point of consumption in order to meet global customers' requirements. See Figure 4.1. 2. It involves the worldwide management of order processing, inventory, transportation, and the combination of warehousing, materials handling, and packaging, all integrated throughout a network of facilities. This means that issues such as global distribution center network orchestration, integrated inventory management, packaging and materials handling, reverse logistics, including backhaul logistics, and various forms of transportation, ocean, air, land, and intermodal, are key strategic and operational elements of global logistics. Strategically, within the integrated global supply chain of multinational corporations, it is predicted that logistics as a function will become 13% more globalized in the next 5 years, 2013 to 2018, and 30% more globalized in the next 10 years, by 2023. Figure 4.2 illustrates these increases. In 2013, logistics scored 61 out of 100 points in terms of being globalized, where 100 is fully globalized and 0 is purely domestic. A score of 61 places logistics ahead of operations and market channels, but behind purchasing, in terms of the degree of globalness permeating that function of the supply chain. Logistics is also found to be the second most important of the 4 functions: logistics, purchasing, operations, and market channels, scoring a 94 out of a possible 100 points on the degree of importance in contributing to overall global supply chain management for the multinational corporation. Market channels is at the top with 96, followed by logistics with 94, operations with 92, and 85. Purchasing with 89. Logistics is expected to fall slightly in importance, from 94 to 93, over the next 5 years vis the other core supply chain functions. Figure 4.3 illustrates the changes in logistics in the 2013 to 2018 time period. As we elaborated on earlier, global logistics includes the activities related to transportation, inventory management, packaging, and materials handling. While these are the operating functions that are generally included in logistics, they are all brought together at the distribution center, DC, or warehouse. The DC or warehouse is the place where the product is transported from or to, the inventory is stored or staged, and packaging and materials handling are often completed. The DC may be as simple as a fenced area, or it may be a highly automated facility with more than 1 million square feet, 93,000 square meters, under one roof. This brings us to a story. On a trip to Ireland, one of the authors looked down on the village of Kilkenny and saw the ruins of a church surrounded by what looked like aluminum barrels. With a closer look, the sign on the fence confirmed 86. That it was a Guinness distribution center for full and empty kegs. So, DCs come in all shapes, forms, and foundations. Beginning with a distribution center as the center of integration for most logistics activities, the following sections describe the characteristics, activities, and recommendations for global distribution centers: inventory management, packaging and materials handling, transportation, and reverse logistics. The chapter concludes with general guidelines for global logistics. Global distribution centers. A global distribution center, or warehouse, is a facility that positions and allows customization of products for delivery to worldwide wholesalers or retailers, or directly to consumers anywhere in the world. On a global scale, distribution centers are used by manufacturers, importers, exporters, wholesalers, retailers, transportation companies, and customs agencies to store products and provide a location where customization can be facilitated. When warehousing shifted from passive storage of products to strategic assortments and processing, the term distribution center became more widely used to capture this strategic and dynamic aspect of not only storing but adding value to products that are being warehoused or staged. A DC is at the center of the global supply chain, specifically the order processing part of the order fulfillment process. DCs are the foundation of a global supply network, as they allow either a single location or satellite warehouses to store quantities and assortments of products and allow for value-added customization. Global DCs should be located strategically in the global 87 marketplace, considering the aggregate total transportation cost of moving products from plants or suppliers through the distribution center and then delivering them to customers. Once a site or sites have been identified, other factors to consider are labor and community acceptance, a reliable and productive workforce, environmental issues such as water, air, or traffic restrictions, and infrastructure capabilities such as electricity, telecommunications, and so on. Distribution centers exist for both economic and service reasons. The four most common types are the consolidation DC, the breakbulk DC, the cross-dock DC, and the order assembly DC. Using the European cities of Amsterdam, Copenhagen, Frankfurt, and Paris as examples, let us briefly illustrate the activities that each type may carry out. A consolidation DC located in Frankfurt, for example, may be used to receive products from the plants in Amsterdam, Copenhagen, and Paris, which are then combined into the exact quantity needed for a large shipment to a retailer in Eastern Europe. A breakbulk DC in Amsterdam, on the other hand, may receive a single large shipment from a plant in Frankfurt and then arrange for shipments to retailers in Belgium, France, and the Netherlands. The rationale for a breakbulk DC is that it allows for one long-haul movement and 3 short-haul moves rather than 3 individual long-haul moves. The single long-haul move is for a larger quantity, which also means that the cost per unit is less than it would be for the 3 individual long-haul moves. In a cross-dock DC, a facility in Paris, for example, receives product shipments from 3 plants, 1 plant in each of the other 3 cities and then creates specific assortments for retailers around Paris. The rationale for the cross-dock DC is that truckloads of a single plant's products can be brought into the cross-dock facility and then be moved across the dock to other trucks that can move a full truckload of combined manufacturers' products to each retail site. This allows both the inbound movement to the cross-dock facility and the outbound movement to the retailer to be in truckload quantities. An order assembly DC, called a first-tier supplier, such as one in Frankfurt, supports the plant in Frankfurt by orchestrating the assembly of parts from the second-tier suppliers around Europe. The service rationale for warehousing is to position a mix or combination of products near customers to allow for customization or to provide for value-added services. As an example, there may be a DC in Paris that stores healthcare products and delivers them to hospitals around Paris. The facility exists to collect products from multiple manufacturers in a location near the hospital so that supplies are available quickly. DCs in Paris and Frankfurt could become value-added facilities by offering packaging with a specific language and regulatory requirements for a specific country. Once the type and location of each DC have been determined, the next consideration is the operational activities that will take place within the DC. As a general rule of thumb, the breakdown of a DC's costs is allocated as 15% receiving, products, raw materials, and work in process, 20% storage, 50% order picking, and 15% shipping. See figure 4.4. These activities interact 88 with one another, and performance in one area often affects performance in another. Our experience and preferences suggest that 5 key performance indicators, KPIs, should be used when evaluating DC operations in the areas of receiving, storage, order picking, and shipping. These are cost, productivity, utilization, quality, and cycle time. See Table 4.1. 3. Receiving is central to DC operations. Properly receiving the raw materials, work in process, or products is critical to the subsequent handling of those items. Products may be received for the purpose of temporary storage or for the purpose of moving them across the dock for loading into an outbound vehicle. Preferred KPIs relating to DC receiving include the following. Cost of receiving per receiving line available at maximum capacity, cost, volume received per person hour of available work time, productivity, percentage utilization of the receiving dock door, utilization, percentage of accurate receipts, quality, and time taken to process the receipt of items, cycle time. 4. Storage is what we often think of when we mentally envision a DC. Storing items creates value in that it makes them available when and where they are needed in the global supply chain. However, 89. Storage also incurs cost in that storing an item in a DC does consume resources, for example, money, space, and tracking, and thus the amount stored and the length of time it is stored should be minimized. While a just-in-time, JIT, inventory philosophy has reduced the demand for storage, there are still critical economic and service requirements for distribution centers. Preferred KPIs for storage include storage cost per product item, cost, inventory per square foot, productivity, percentage of the location and cube occupied, utilization, percentage of the location without inventory discrepancies, quality, and product inventory days on hand in storage, cycle time. Order picking or selection is where DCs can add significant value to the global supply chain. Effective and efficient order picking enhances the performance of the rest of the supply chain. It is much like an end customer trying to buy a basket of products from a grocery store. If the customer gets all 10 of the items he sets out to buy, he is satisfied. If he is able to find only 9 of the 10 items, he is probably not going to be satisfied with a grocery run. In the case of a DC, the order pickers, whether manual or automated, must be able to access the correct product and quantity in a minimum amount of time and at a minimum cost. The order picking process includes the activities of picking the products from the shelves and moving them to the staging area at the truck docks. If order pickers are able to find all the products or parts for the next entity in the global supply chain, they are creating positive performance and collaboration in the chain. The critical KPIs for order picking include the cost of picking per order line, cost, order lines picked per hour or per day, productivity, percentage utilization of picking employees and equipment, utilization, percentage of perfect picking lines, quality, and 90. Tran 89 Tren 187. 1 Tren 80.146T. TNG VT. Cock Shoot TC Atrine So NTHO. INTH. 100%. BNG BRNG 3 IT. Con CPPHNHIJO Microsoft.